Welcome to the Screen the Screener College Basketball Podcast with your hosts, Mike Randall and Gus Kearns.
Welcome in, listeners, to the Screen the Screener College Basketball Podcast, where we're always talking everything college hoops. You could have been anywhere else on the dial, but you chose to be here with us, Mike and Gus. And we appreciate that. Happy holidays out there. We hope everybody's on the nice list. We hope everybody enjoys the give as much as the get. And we hope that you take care of all of your holiday elements and tasks out there. One of our elements and tasks here on the Screen the Screener College Basketball Podcast is to talk as much as we can about the college hoop game that we love. We're going to talk some Maryland Terrapins basketball. We've brought in the managing editor of Testudo Times, Lila Bromberg. Follow her at Lila B. Bromberg. There's actually two B's next to each other in her Twitter handle. Please follow everything Terrapin related over at testudotimes.com online. You can also follow the podcast on Twitter at Testudo Times Pod. Hit that up on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, please. All content can also be located on Twitter at Testudos Times. And don't forget to give Lila a follow. One more time, Lila B. Bromberg. Lila was nice enough to talk to us about pretty much everything Maryland. We talked some Anthony Cowan and his late game heroics. Talked what other member of the team also can put up a double-double besides their big forward Smith. Talked what might be giving the Maryland Terrapins players and fan base some false hope. Also talked about suppressing college student athlete personalities and what plays into that. Little Luka Garza and some other Big Ten elements. If you really like what you're listening to, please, and you're in the giving mood, go ahead and give the podcast a follow on Twitter at SDS Podcast. Efficiency of keystrokes, of course. Don't forget to give Mike a follow as well at Randall Rant. He is insightful, educational, entertaining, all in one nice, tidy little package, which we hope that you get and give a couple of tidy, nice little packages this holiday season. And if you really like what you're listening to, and maybe you jump over to Lila's podcast, to Testudo's Times Pod, leave a nice review. Leave 5 stars. Say nice things about what people are putting out about the college basketball game. Go ahead. Spread some kindness. Kindness is always cool. Happy holidays out there, everybody. We hope that you enjoy the conversation with Lila and the breakdown on Maryland basketball and a couple of other elements that are Big Ten. Happy holidays out there, everybody. Cheers. All right, welcome in, listeners, to the Screen Screener College Basketball Podcast, where we're always talking everything college hoops. And we had a kind of big game here on the East Coast between two teams that might be heading different directions, but we'll dive into that a little bit later. We had Seton Hall and Maryland, and because Maryland has been in the top 10, we decided to bring in an expert on the Terps. We brought in Lila Bromberg. Lila, thank you for joining the podcast. You can find Lila's work over at Testudo Times. Thanks for joining the pod. How was your trip to Jersey? Did you survive okay? You get back all right?
We got back all right. It was kind of just a drive-in same day and come back that night. You know, definitely not what we were expecting. I think that at the beginning of the season, we saw it as a marquee game. And then, you know, they're down their 2 best players. And, you know, it seemed like it should be an easy win for Maryland, especially after having the week off to regroup. But it just kind of seemed like everything they had said they worked on over the week just didn't really materialize.
It seemed like it was really clunky offensively, and we'll dive into that game a little bit later. I guess my only other question, follow-up, did you hit Dinosaur Barbecue while you were over by the Rock, or did you miss out?
I wanted to. I unfortunately did not have time.
Oh, man, okay. Next trip that brings you up here, I think that's the place to hit. All right, let's dive into your team. Let's dive into your roster, Lila. Cowan Jr., the vet point guard, is back. He's doing his finest Mellow Tremble impersonation, trying to get the Terps as many wins as he can with his late game heroics. Simply put, he's been one of the best guards in the nation thus far. Something beyond the numbers that makes him really special, especially in those late game situations. What's up with Cowans?
I think he has been really good the past 2 games, not as much, but when he's on his game, he just has a knack for making late threes. It's just something that he has kind of been known for. Like the one he had against Illinois was ridiculously far. It was like 30 feet or something like that. And he just kind of gets in a mindset late where if he shoots it from deep, he's going to make it most of the time. I don't really know how to explain it. He just has this thing where if it's late in a game, you know, chances are he's going to be able to make that 3.
Sometimes that's just in players' DNA, and that's like not a coachable thing from, you know, coaching like my daughter's team. In that situation, you're either going to like drive it to the hoop, try to draw a foul, or put up a shot fearlessly, and that's just in your DNA. That's not like anything you can draw up on the whiteboard. And Cowan seems to have that like gene in his DNA. Jalen Smith, NBA eyes are watching him all over the place. Double-double machine. He came back after getting some feedback through the NBA process last season. I guess the question with Smith is, what advancements have you seen since he's returned, and what new wrinkles have appeared in his game this season that he's benefited from that could maybe up his draft status in a kind of a weak NBA draft this year.
It's actually interesting. We always talk about on the beat, he's had kind of the quietest double-doubles this year.
Definitely, yeah.
At the end of a game, and you're like, what? Like, he had a double-double? I think he's definitely improved, but I don't think he's in the right position he needs to be because Bruno Fernando left for the NBA. And the freshmen really aren't ready, and Chol Marial isn't back yet. He's been forced to play this 5 position, which really isn't his strong suit. He'd worked over the summer on kind of his play down low, but it doesn't seem to be translating that well. So I think where he really thrives is being able to, he was shooting the 3 a lot better this season. He works best when he's in a 4 position, when he's able to, find open looks. He's not the guy that was just going to bully people down low like Fernando did. And so I think the issue right now is they're trying to make him do that. And so I think it'll really help his draft stock if they kind of play him to his strengths, which is more that 4 position.
Well, you mentioned Chariel. Do you think that if they can integrate him, even if it's only 10 minutes a game at the 5 and then slide Jalen back over to his natural position of the 4, then maybe he's back at that stretch 4 position. Do you think that would benefit him as far as how his game might look and how it might translate to Maryland's success?
Yeah, I definitely think so. He has had a couple threes this year when he's able to get that open space when Mekhi Mitchell has been in. And Mekhi Mitchell has looked kind of raw, so that's why Turton has had to put Jalen back at the 5 at times. I think it will help, but Chol Marial is not anywhere near ready right now from everything we've been hearing. I personally was extremely surprised to hear that he was even available last night, and everyone kind of knew even if he was available, it was more for like appearances and he wasn't really going to be able to play. Because Turton has been saying for a while that, this is a kid that hasn't played really in 2 years. He's been dealing with injuries for a really long time. And so it's going to take him a while to get back, especially then to adapt to a college level. So we're trying to take things as slow as possible. But I think just having that size will be really helpful. I think he could be back maybe, mid-January, something like that. But it's going to be starting out really slow.
We'll see how well he integrates and how much that has an impact on Jalen Smith's position on the floor, for lack of a better term, to see if he's in a little bit more advantageous position, like you mentioned, that could match his skill set a little bit better than as opposed to, manning up at the 5. Let's talk some of your wings. The wings that you have on the roster are really interesting. Aaron Wiggins, he's an NBA-sized wing who isn't shooting it as well as he did last season. He still allows Maryland to be really uber switchable on defense. Is he showing signs of breaking out of the sophomore shooting slump and dusting off some of those shooting woes on the practice floor or in shoot-arounds? Or is this the Aaron Wiggins we're going to see for the whole season? What do you feel on Wiggins?
The thing with Maryland is they're very, very limited on media access, unfortunately. But from what we have seen, I'm out there for, all the shoot-arounds before the game and different things like that. Like, he's hitting like around the same amount he would in warm-ups as last year. Sometimes it doesn't seem like as much. I think part of it is he kind of thrived coming off the bench last year and not having that pressure on himself. He feels some pressure on himself, but there's been so many other improvements with him that it hasn't mattered as much. He put on a lot of muscle that could have something to do with it. I'm not sure, but the muscle has really allowed him to play a lot better in the paint, and his defense has just improved tremendously with 3 consecutive steals in 3 straight games. With 3 steals in 3 consecutive games. He had this one game where he had like 3 come behind kind of LeBron style blocks. Like, he just is a really, really athletic kid. And I think that he's really the full NBA package once he gets that shot figured out. And, this is a kid that shot over 41% last year. His high school coach has said he's the best shooter he's ever seen. He was a Steph Curry MVP of that camp. Like, he's, a good shooter. I think it's just he has some pressure on himself right now, maybe lacking a little confidence from just how it's been going, but I think he'll get out of it. And I think I've been saying before this season, before we saw the athleticism just based on his shooting, that I thought, he would be a sneaky kind of first round pick. And I think if he can get his shot back to where it was, he definitely will be.
I think you're spot on. And I think, you would know more about the track record than we would as far as his past performances and have a little bit wider view and a wider scope. More than the thumbnail sketch that we see as, quasi Terp watchers, here and there. So if you're speaking that he's had this resume of great shooting for, a number of games, a number of seasons, a number of years, then I think it's only a matter of time before he positively regresses back to where you're speaking of. You spoke about his monstrous effect on the defensive end. He's been unbelievably valuable for the Terps on the defensive end, guarding, pretty much 1 through 4. on the defensive end. And I was kind of waiting on the shooting numbers. But if you're saying that that's there, then I guess we just wait for that game where he hits 5 threes and we're like, oh, yeah, there's the Wiggins we know, right?
It'll be interesting to see because I think he has to eventually. I thought it would have happened by now, Big Ten play, but I mean, he really had an incredible shot. A lot of it, I think, has to do with some of the looks that he's maybe getting and the way the offense is being set up at times. I think he works best when, they're going in and out and he can get those looks, and that hasn't been happening the last couple games as much. But I definitely think it's there for him. He's also just very good at taking care of the ball. Like you look at a game last night where the team has 17 turnovers and he only has 1, and everyone else on starters has like at least 3. He's just matured a lot this year in his decision making and things like that, and is smart in those areas where the team has been struggling.
And I think that we can bring the conversation with Wiggins kind of full circle. You mentioned Bruno before. If you don't have the big that's going to give you that quality paint touch, and then you can kick it out for that open 3 that might, the defender might be a little bit late closing out on, then that's going to limit the percentage performance to make, so on and so on. So maybe Wiggins falls into that category. And you mentioned, Smith is kind of struggling with getting quality touches down on the block. So maybe that changes once the roster changes and the rotation changes a little bit. But let's talk your other wing, Darryl Morsell. He's been rock solid on both ends of the ball for the Terps. Super luxury to have a player like him. He's displayed an uptick with his shooting numbers so far this year. Just how valuable has Morsell been this season, Lila, the Terps, on both ends of the floor, offensively and defensively?
Darryl Morsell is someone who really holds this team together, and he's always been that defensive guy. And you saw last season in the NCAA tournament that he really was starting to work out his offense more and was a lot of the reason why Maryland was still in that LSU game. And this season, you really saw an improvement from him both with his shooting and rebounding. Down in Orlando, he almost had 3 straight double-doubles. The first double-double he had there was like the first of his career. And he's shown that he's really improved his 3-point shooting. I mean, I think just the team in general is struggling from that area, and so that can sometimes affect his game. But, we've seen spurts of where he's really improved that and shown that he can be more than just a defender. But I think also from a mentality standpoint, he's a guy that is able to calm people down and kind of get the team in the right mindset at times. And that's kind of the guy that he can serve, off the bench, or if he's on the starting rotation as well.
It sounds like he's just like one of those like classic, like locker room practice floor guys. He's going to be the guy that people listen to when he speaks up. That's going to be the voice that the other student athletes key into. And when he does decide to speak up, maybe the coaching staff actually takes a step back and says like, hey, if Morsell has something to say about this, we're going to let him voice this out because we know that the team is going to respond well to him. I mean, again, what a luxury to have a player like him. And speaking of that coaching staff, let's talk about Coach Turgeon. The Coach Williams title is always going to exist as an end of the season goal for the Terrapins to replicate at any point. And I mean, that's like a blessing and a curse for every program. Mm-hmm. What coach demonstrated this season that's resulted in a team that's lived inside the top 10 all season, seems to be one of the favorites in the Big Ten, and has gotten talk as like a Final Four team? It's
been interesting because there definitely were changes towards the beginning of the season. The last few games have been uncharacteristic. I don't know if it's, facing steeper competition, but I mean, you look at I think the Marquette game is a really good example of just the changes that Turgeon has made. And, that's a, NCAA tournament quality team. He has been able to play multiple defenses, which he's never really done before and throughout his entire coaching career. And that's really helped the team. It hasn't been coming through as much recently, but when they are able to do that, it really allows them to get out and transition, which is where this team thrives because it's a lot of really athletic players. It seemed like the turnovers were getting limited earlier on. It's kind of arisen as an issue, but for a while there, it was the best, assist turnover ratio of his tenure, the fastest, offensive performance of his tenure and things like that. So it'll be interesting to see how it bounces back because what the team is saying that is like he's continuing to draw these plays and things like that. Guys just aren't executing and taking it seriously enough. So, Turgeon is getting a lot of backlash, but I think we did see some adjustments from him. But it's also a concern that some of the same issues are arising that seem to always arise with his teams.
I think the thing that is one of the talking points with Coach Turgeon recently is just like the inconsistency from game or week to week of like you can have such a high level performance and then we'll bring up the clunker right now, I guess, and talk recent results. The stumbling and the bumbling that they did on the offensive end against Seton Hall. And I know Seton Hall was really trying to grind it out here and they had a mindset and it was a road game. And anytime you go on the road against a tough, major conference team, it's going to be a challenge. It's a grind. The Powell Seton Hall team, it was a tough loss on the road. Romario Gill was unbelievably defensive on the defensive end. He was so impressive. Whoa. So I guess the question is, after seeing like how impressive he was on the defensive end, and you mentioned Joel Mario a little bit before, how close is he to finding floor time and maybe making the same impact that Romario Gill had on the defensive end for Seton Hall? I guess just talk some results from the Seton Hall game, and then if you want to expand upon how you talked about Mario before, but do you think he could have that type of impact on the defensive end that Gill had for Seton Hall?
I mean, it's really just hard to say because we haven't been able to see really tape of him, and no one really knows what he can do. I mean, he was such a good prospect as a sophomore, but then he was just burdened by injuries. Right. And so it's going to be a slow thing, but I think just because of his length and unique wingspan, if he does get those minutes, he can really have that impact. Maryland has been really strong defensively. It's more of like an offensive issue in the paint. Right. But I think that like even if he isn't where he needs to be offensively, just his wingspan at defensive end will be really helpful.
You were there. You got to see it firsthand with your own eyes. What were some of the things that Seton Hall was doing that provided such difficulty for Maryland on the offensive end? Was it the paint touches like you talked about previously? Did they really get in the passing lanes? Like, what was the thing that really was the bugaboo for this Terrapin team against this Pirate team?
Seton Hall was switching up their defenses a lot, which is something that Maryland hasn't seen as much, this year, but it was happening a ton. Maryland, I think a lot of it was their own mistakes as well. Like, the 7-2 center you mentioned, despite repeatedly, not being able to go up against him, they're continuing to pass in the paint instead of trying to like pass back and out and continuing to do that, which is where they found success this season, is when they're, really using as much ball movement as possible. And that just wasn't really happening. Kind of sloppy play, sloppy turnover. I think the defense that Seton Hall was playing and how they're switching up certainly played a factor, but I think a lot of it was just Maryland wasn't making smart decisions.
It's interesting because you mentioned the impact that they were having in the paint, the Pirates were having in the paint defensively, but then also the change of the defense on the perimeter. If you're going against a 3-2 and you're going against a 1-3-1 and then you're going against man, like there are certain decisions you have to make. So I think that might fall a little bit onto the backcourt that you're mentioning and just like make better decisions. I think you nailed it right there. It seemed like Willard had a decent game plan against Turgeon, and Turgeon was kind of playing catch up. So Willard was maybe like one step ahead, strangely enough, in the coaching matchup. All right, Lila, let's tap into your Big Ten mind here. We're going to go a little big picture in your own hometown conference. Who's been the most impressive player that you've come across thus far in the league? For whatever reason that you think, who have you been the most impressed with inside the Big Ten player-wise?
I think of players like I've seen and really been able to watch. One player that really impressed me was Kofi Coburn, a freshman for Illinois. His body type is insane. I think he's either 7'2" or it's somewhere in the 7-foot range. I believe it's around 7'2", 290 pounds. He has a really, really high shooting percentage, was just able to body people in the paint, get some overlooks as well. And he was just someone that was really hard for Maryland to stop. To have that as a freshman, I think has been really, really impressive. And he's also been one of the leaders in the league in rebounding as well.
You mentioned his dimensions, his physical dimensions. That dude can get up and down the floor. That guy can.
I was so surprised by how fast he was moving during that game. I was like, this guy's 290 pounds. There's no way he should be moving that fast.
Right. Yeah. I was super impressed with his athleticism. I didn't think even though it was north-south athleticism, I was really impressed with his change of gears, getting from the defensive end onto the offensive end. He beat a couple players down the floor multiple times, and he hustles back on defense and is a deterrent at that rim. That guy's been unbelievably impressive as a freshman. And you mentioned his dimensions. His dimensions like must have like NBA eyes, like absolutely salivating over him. All right, let's go to teams. Lila, what do you think inside your conference? Give us a breakdown of what teams you think have a shot, a legit shot, not just like, well, I think this team could do like a legit shot to win the whole darn thing this season in your eyes. How many teams do you see, and maybe give a couple of reasons or a couple of characteristics why?
I think right now Ohio State is the favorite in my mind. I kind of overlooked them a bit going into the season because there weren't like a lot of huge names that stood out. Caleb Wesson has been really good, but they've had a lot of freshmen come in and do really well. Like they've just been the most impressive by far to me of any team in the Big Ten. I mean, they had that one loss to Minnesota, but besides that, they've looked incredible. And, their wins like by an average of 20 something points, they've shown an ability to adapt really well. I think their coach has shown that he can make really good in-game adjustments. So that's a team I've been really impressed with. And I think it's someone that people picked from anywhere to like 5 to 3rd. But I think with the way Michigan State has been playing, the way Maryland has been playing, that like Ohio State could be that team. I mean, we'll see what happens. I think Maryland can turn around if they can focus, but Ohio State looks really, really dangerous right now.
We're just gonna brag a little bit we were hoping that you went that direction here on the podcast. We predicted that Ohio State would make the Final Four preseason. So we were totally on board with you. We're glad you're back in the podcast, Lila. That's awesome. How about this? How about just the most surprising team inside your conference, inside the Big Ten, whether it be for lesser or for greater, for better or for worse, the good or the bad? What's been the most surprising team inside your conference that you've seen with your eyes, whether it be because you've been really disappointed with them or you've been really impressed?
I've been really disappointed in Michigan State. I mean, having watched last year in the Big Ten tournament, I remember sitting there. I mean, Maryland had been eliminated. We still had our hotel room and stuff, so we were just kind of going to watch the game. Sitting there in all of their ball movement and, the way that they're able to play. I mean, Tom Izzo is just such an incredible coach. They had so many pieces going back into this year, but they've been upset by some teams that they shouldn't have and, haven't really been able to pull it out. I mean, obviously you have, everything that's going on like the emotional side of things, which certainly plays, a factor of everything that's going on with that. But I really thought they would look a lot better. And even in their wins, I don't think they've looked like that dominant.
And I think if you're the preseason number one team coming in and you have that, not necessarily hype, but you have that reputation, don't live up to that reputation like early on in the season, of course people are going to be disappointed with you. It's like a no-win situation. Unless you go undefeated until conference play, like people are going to find some warts. And I think we've definitely found some warts with Michigan State. And you mentioned the unfortunate uncertainty and the sadness that, their roster and especially Cassius Winston has had to deal with. Obviously, thoughts there to the Michigan State family and to Winston's family for that. That sounds absolutely terrible to deal with. Been able to navigate that, but at the same point, I think we have to look like black and white results on the floor. And if we're going to do that, then I think they might fall into the disappointment category. You're right. All right, let's go a couple funny ones here. Let's go. How about what do you think of Jordan Bohannon's shoe leave at Iowa State after Iowa's win at Hilton Magic? He autographed his shoes and left them out on the 3-point line. You good with that? Is like a boss move or a soft move? What do you think?
For someone that is not a fan of Iowa or Iowa State, like from an outside perspective and someone who covers college basketball, I liked it. I think that at least in my experience with covering Maryland, SIDs and just the whole world of college basketball does so much to suppress the personality of players to a ridiculous degree. So I like when you have a player, whether it's a good or bad thing, that is showing some personality and doing something like that, because there's just not enough of it right now.
I think that's the perfect answer. We're just going to leave that right there. That's unbelievable. Okay. Next one, how nasty is Marcus Carr? He lit up the nation's number 2 defense for 5 points for a win at the barn over the previously mentioned Ohio State. Is this kid really this good? Is this explosive as a scorer? What else do we need to know about Marcus Carr from Minnesota?
I don't remember him seeing a crazy amount of minutes or looking incredible last year. It kind of seems to coming up out of nowhere. He was not a name that I even really recognized before the season, even though I've seen Minnesota play Maryland so many times over the past few years. But to shoot, 70.4% from the floor and, over 50% from deep says a lot. He also had 7 assists in that game. And he's had some inconsistent games where then he's been really low single digits. I mean, if he can perform like that, I mean, that was great. It's also just an interesting thing. I mean, Michigan State and Northwestern messed it up, but Big Ten teams were, 13-0 at home, which was insane. Right. And it was about to be everyone 1-1 in the conference, but, Northwestern couldn't beat Michigan State.
So I think that speaks to just how hard it is and what the grind is inside your conference and how hard it is to go on the road, regardless of where it is. In the barn, and Marcus Carr's performance definitely illustrates that. All right, and we have to ask, we're based in New Jersey, Lila. Rutgers, you buying in yet? They're switching to D. They play 13 guys. The rack is a tough place to play. We have to ask, are you buying in on Rutgers yet? Do you believe in Steve Peichel?
I don't think I can.
Oh, come on.
The Seton Hall game, that's an in-state rivalry. I don't know. Rutgers is just not a school I can really take seriously in the conference. But, I mean, maybe I'll be proven wrong.
As Jerseyans over here, we hope that you're proven wrong. No offense or anything, Lila. All right, let's look ahead. And by the way, when we're looking ahead, let's just wish everybody happy holidays out there. We hope everyone is on the nice list and opens a presents with joy and maybe gives a present with that same joy. So happy holidays out there to everybody. And speaking of joy, there's nothing joyful about the Terps, like journey through January. I mean, they have Indiana, Ohio State, at Iowa, at Whiskey, Purdue. That is tough. What are some of the things that are going to give Terps trouble? And then what's maybe something that we might want to learn about this group of student athletes during this winter Big Ten grind that's upcoming for Maryland? Lila, what do your eyes see? And if you can play fortune teller and look into the crystal ball a little bit here, you don't have to go game by game, but just what are you hoping to learn about this particular team and just how tough is this stretch?
Yeah, it's a really tough stretch, but I think almost in a way it's good for this team. I think the problem that I have with Turgeon, I think his non-conference schedules are way too easy. It kind of gave the team a sense of false hope in a way, starting off the season. And then when things didn't start going their way, he said he started to see like a lack of confidence over the past few games or so, especially when you freshmen coming in and you're just playing these like really easy games and, you're ranked really high and all these things. Like it didn't seem like, and we've heard this from players too, but just people weren't taking it seriously enough that there wasn't the right mentality. And so I think having a slate like this forces them to grow up a bit and the stakes are much higher. And I think maybe that wakes them up a bit, especially after these last two losses. They'll have a game with Brian in between that will be kind of an easy one to really find themselves back again. So I think it's actually a good thing that they have, Indiana has always been a big game for Maryland, but Indiana does not, they don't look as good as they have this year. They look pretty good. I think it'll still be like a really intense game. I think Ohio State could be a really interesting game. I think it could either go with Ohio State blowing Maryland out, or it could be a really close game. I think it's going to be more of a close game. And I think that's definitely like a game to circle on people's calendar just nationwide. I think that's going to be a really, really good game. At Iowa, they were able to pick up a win there last year. Turgeon's like first win against a ranked team on a road in a really long time. With Jordan Bohannon being out, that's obviously an issue. Right. I'm a bit worried about Jalen Smith going against Luka Garza because Garza just looks insane right now.
He's playing bananas basketball right now. He's been so impressive for Iowa. And you mentioned like with Bohannon, like he's going to take on more of the scoring load. And that might be a good thing for them. It's
really fun for me to see Luka Garza because he's out of Murray in DC, which is not a school that is known for basketball at all. I went to a field school in DC. It's like one of the worst athletic conferences in DC in like the league above. And it's just like not a good athletic conference at all. They're not taken seriously. And so to see a kid from a school like that to be able to like be one of the best players in the Big Ten is just incredible, kind of unheard of. So that's been really fun for me, especially because I got to cover him a bit in high school. So it's been really interesting to see because I remember when he committed and I was like, wow, like there hasn't been someone to commit to like a major school like this in a while, but I didn't really think he'd be able to do anything just given the conference he was in and just caliber of school that he was at in high school. He's been incredible. And so that's been really cool to see. He's been unbelievable. And then, you finish up with Wisconsin and Purdue and, Matt Painter is going to have something schemed up and playing at Wisconsin, the pace is going to be at a certain level and they're going to really value possessions and try to jack a couple of threes. This is like one of the toughest slates going once you jump into January. So I think we're going to find out a lot about this Terps team. Okay, let's go big picture here, okay? Last meaningful question, and then we'll finish up with some fun ones. Wiseman leaves Memphis. Cole Anthony is hurt and out for a couple of weeks. Charles Bassey has season-ending surgery. LaMelo Ball is playing in Australia. RJ Hampton is down under as well. So I guess the big question here is, and just be as honest as you want to be, is it time to allow these players to get paid while playing? We think it is. Like, where do you stand on SB 206, the legislation from California that is going to allow players to get paid, soon to be followed by other states? Are you cool with kids cashing in during their short college careers or maybe prolonged college careers? Where are you at with this? I think that in terms of endorsement, it definitely, should be a thing. And I think with students able to make money off their own name, you then aren't having like as many issues that people have been like bringing up with them getting paid by the school because, it's not being financed by the school. It could be a great thing for media as well. I think it'll allow people to see more personalities of these kids and also just being around these kids, every day, seeing how hard they work and things like that. It's frustrating. It's frustrating for like a lot of them that they're not able to, make money off of it and you're, doing classes and all these things. And so like if you're not going to let them leave early and not do that option, I mean, they should be able to make money off of their own name because the school is making, a ridiculous amount of money on it. And Maryland's athletic director has, come out. We just had an article, I think last week, a really in-depth article, long form, kind of looking at Maryland's perspective on it. Sorry, not the SID. The athletic director says that he's very in favor of it and is going to try to, fight to make it happen. So, I don't know how much I actually believe that, but I certainly think that it's going to start trending in that direction.
We think it is too. And it seems very logical. If you are going to be one of these players and you're forced to make a decision, and it's not even like one of these student athletes. The example that we bring up all the time is Katie Ledecky from Stanford. She blew up in the Olympics and had an unbelievable, Olympic Games and won multiple gold medals, broke multiple world records. And so she had to decide, am I going to stay a Stanford Cardinal or am I just going to go pro? There should be a choice where she can do both. There should be a choice where she can still be a Stanford Cardinal and compete and be with her teammates and be with the coaching staff that she loves and also represent her country. And the same thing is true with James Wiseman. There should be an opportunity for him to gather what he needs to gather monetarily while representing Memphis or whatever team, whatever player might go to, and just get what they're worth on the open market. It should not be limited by the antiquated amateur rules that exist inside the NCAA. And if they're worth that much, then why not just let them receive that much? And then we get to still enjoy them as college basketball players for 1 year. I know the NBA, the collective bargaining agreement is going to maybe put a doom to the one and done, and then people are just able to come in. But I think we're just going to see more and more. Until that happens, I think we're just going to see more and more players choosing to do what LaMelo Ball and RJ Hampton did. It's just like, and James Wiseman in this case, just like, forget this. I'm done with this organization. They don't allow us to do anything. They don't allow me to make any money. I'm just going to go someplace where I can make a couple bucks and get better at my craft and improve my status while not being limited by antiquated rules. I think that makes sense.
It's not just a money thing, too. Andrew Terrell, who is someone who was a bench player for Maryland, a walk-on, and is now, does a podcast for us, The Tilted Bench. He had a huge social media presence, so he decided to start a blog, and the NCAA shut it down. Like, he wasn't making any money off of it. He was literally just doing a blog, and people really enjoyed it, and they made him, shut it down. And so it's like even little things like that where it's, kids who might not be able to make money, but like just being able to share their experiences and things like that. It's kind of ridiculous that someone's blog should be shut down by the NCAA.
Wow, that is like the perfect example that we were looking for. That's awesome. Okay, let's get you out of here on our final four usual fun ones. All right, tunes. When you're dialing up content or trying to edit a podcast or getting your things ready, like you were mentioned before, what are you listening to? What tunes are you listening to? What's on the playlist? What's helping you get your job done?
So it kind of shifts depending on what I'm working on, but mostly I'm a big alternative rock fan. So usually like a mix of like Black Keys, Dreamers, Catfish and the Bottlemen, that sort of stuff usually. Or like, you can never go wrong with some classic rock. So that's kind of where I tend to lean a bit.
Nothing wrong with a little Dan Auerbach. I'm down with that. Okay, trust. We're going to put you on the spot here. Who's one player you blindly trust in the whole entire nation for your own reasons, with the game on the line, ball in his hands, that you want to go win that game? Who's the one player in the nation that you're like, yep, I want that guy with the ball and I want that guy making decisions?
It's been tough this year because there hasn't been like that guy, but someone that I've really been starting to watch a ton more in the past stuff is Oregon's Peyton Pritchard, senior guard, second season in a row leading, Oregon in scoring. And, he really has been showing that he can lead his team late. Overtime versus Michigan, he had, 15 of their last 17 points. He's shooting 51% on field goal attempts and, almost 40% from beyond the arc, while also averaging 6 assists and 4.2 rebounds. Like, if you look at a lot of their close games, he's the difference in a lot of their NCAA tournament victories last year. So I think he's the guy that I would go with right now if I had to choose one.
I think if you're going to look inside your own conference, a whole bunch of Michigan fans would be shaking their heads in agreement with you on that particular selection. Okay, tastes. How about, we don't know if you're a craft beer drinker, but is there one craft beer that we need to know about down in Maryland that you've enjoyed, your travels? Is there something that we need to recommend to the listeners out there?
Yeah, I'm a big sour person. I really like sour.
Okay.
And so one company that I haven't been to their brewery, but I've had their drinks at a couple of restaurants and places it's called Oliver Brewing Company. It's in Baltimore. And they have this one Goza, which is like a version of a sour. It's like a blueberry lemon Goza, and it's incredibly good. And they just have a lot of variety in terms of different types of beers, because I'm not really a big IPA hoppy person, and so they have a lot of different options, which I like a lot.
Yeah, with the gozes, like it's always nice if they can integrate a little fruit flavor in there and give you some
exactly.
attach on to as a taste. That's great. And how about travels? We mentioned that you came up to Jersey. What's one game that you're most looking forward to road tripping this season to cover the Terps that you're really excited about?
I think one game I'm really looking forward to, like we have a limited budget, so a lot of ours are like road trips. I think Michigan State, I haven't been there in person before, and I think I'm just most excited about it because like not only could it be a good matchup, but they just have a really nice policy of media that I appreciate. Like they have an open locker room, so I'm looking forward to that. And I've just heard it's a really cool arena and environment, and I haven't been there yet, surprisingly, so that'll be fun.
It's always funny when we ask that last question. People have so many different answers. Like we asked Adam Jordy, who covers Ohio State, and he said, I'm really looking forward to going to this one record shop in Nebraska. And you never know like where people are going to go with their answer. Somebody said they really like this one restaurant and they serve this one nice like. So
we never have time. We always do like the day trips. I mean, I think when we go to Michigan State, we'll be staying there for a night. But like we're like usually funding ourselves unless it's an NCAA tournament and SB Nation helps us out. A lot of our trips are just in and out, so we don't have to pay for a hotel room. But like we definitely need to try to enjoy the road trips a bit more.
That totally makes sense. I love that everybody has a different answer for that. So I hope you enjoyed your road trip up there. I hope you get to spend some extended time. Lila, thank you. Please enjoy the holidays in the right place with the right people for the right amount of time. Maybe we'll catch up on later on this season and wish you and the Terps luck. And we hope that we can continue to follow the Terrapins and the climb that they might have. I don't know, Final Four range, a Big Ten title, maybe something in the tournament, something of that nature. Thanks for breaking down the Terps for us, Lila. It was really cool.
All right. Thank you.
Cheers. Cilantro. Gratulati, everybody.